You know that guy, Bob Smeerfak? I love him. I mean, whenever I have trouble sleeping, I load up one of his videos, I'm out like a light.
Hello, I'm Bob Smeerfak, but not really. This series is designed for theological seminary students with approaching exams who have not had time to read the Bible, and for fashionistas worried that what they wear to the final judgment might affect their chances. Matthew chapter 22. Let's go. In this chapter, Jesus is still giving the Pharisees a piece of his mind in the temple. Apparently, a lot of the pieces of his mind were parables, and he wasn't in danger of running out. He fired out another one. God's program was equivalent to a dictator who decided to plan a big wedding for his boy. He sent out a bunch of people to pass out invitations, but people were like, "Ooh, sorry, can't make it." So the dictator sent out another round of invitation bearers who specifically told people the lowdown. Check it out, there's going to be food, including a lot of dead livestock. It's all set up. Let's get this wedding on. But this time people made wisecracks about it before they split back to their farms and businesses. And the ones who did stick around disrespected the messengers and then killed them. This wasn't a slow news day. Of course, word got back to the dictator, and he was livid. He deployed a few military battalions to go kill the killers and set their town on fire for good measure. Then the dictator huddled up with his servants, he must have had a few left, and said, "Look, we've got a nuptial celebration all set to go, but all the people we invited don't deserve a kick-ass party like this." He didn't have to mention they were also now dead. But he sent his staff out on a road trip and told them to collect anybody they could get their hands on and say, "Come to the soiree." So the servants canvassed the whole area and rounded up everyone with a heartbeat, including losers and upstanding folks. Voila, it was a packed ceremony. Now, when the dictator strolled in to check everybody out, he saw a guy who was not dressed for the occasion. He said to the guy, "My good man, how did you get in here wearing that?" The guy didn't have anything to say. Maybe he was wondering, is this a joke? Maybe he was trying to think of a nice way to say, "Look, you jackass, you invite the whole county to come see your kid get married after all your A-list guests had better things to do, and now you're crying because I'm wearing jeans and sneakers? What do you want from me?" But he didn't have time to get any of that out because the dictator ordered his bouncers to tie the guy up and cart him off to somewhere where it was pitch dark, with only the sounds of people sobbing and grinding off their own tooth enamel. This dictator must have had a full-service dungeon. But he left them all with a sentiment about which he probably should have been more upfront, which was that a bunch of people would get invitations, but only a handful would get in. Then the religious hoo-haws made a beeline for the conference room to come up with a plan for how to get the J-man to contradict himself. They decided to launch a wave of their own devotees and followers of King Herod to go quiz Jesus. Those guys said, "Look, oh great one, we know you're the man, and you've got the dope on how the supreme being rolls, and that you don't play favorites because you don't give a rat's ass what a guy's title or salary is. So here's our question for you. Is it cool to pay taxes to the Roman king, or is it not cool?" But Jesus' X-ray lie detector burned right through them, and he shot back, "Why are you lying assholes trying to play me? Show me the money." So they produced a coin for Jesus, who took a look and asked, "Whose name and mug is on this?" They said, "That'd be Caesar." So Jesus said, "There's your answer. Let Caesar have Caesar's stuff, let God have God's stuff, and call it a day." They were a little speechless. But they probably didn't know how easy it is for a guy to be so glib about taxes when all he has to do to pay his own is send out an apostle to use a fish like an ATM, like he did with Peter back in chapter 17. Anyway, they just split. Later that day, a detachment of the local Sadducees stopped by to chat. They wanted to ask him a sticky question about the afterlife, which was sort of in their wheelhouse, because these were the guys who didn't believe anybody was going to get reanimated at the end of the world. They told Jesus that back when Moses was head of Israel Incorporated, he instituted the rule that if a dude bit the big one before he had any kids, his brother was supposed to hook up with his wife and get the job done. So they said, "Have we got a story for you? There used to be 7 brothers around here. The first one got married, and then his heart stopped beating. But he didn't have any progeny. So his brother took on the case and married the wife. But then the second brother died, and then the third one, until all 7 brothers assumed room temperature. And then the wife checked out too. Now, when the afterlife gets booted up and everybody climbs out of their graves, who's she going to be with?" Because they'd all been intimate with her. 7 dead husbands with the same wife? Any competent homicide detective would have ordered autopsies all around to screen for arsenic poisoning. But Jesus took a less forensic approach. He said, "Here's your problem. You guys don't know jack about what's in God's library or what magic tricks God has up his sleeve. Because when everyone's life gets rebooted, nobody's going to walk down the aisle. And nobody's going to get walked down the aisle. In fact, everybody's going to be like God's posse of celestial beings," which presumably meant, in this case, that everyone would be single, though he didn't spell it out. But regarding the big reboot, he said, "You guys missed the divine memo where God told you, 'I am the supreme being that ruled over Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.'" Jesus clarified that God God was head honcho over people who were alive, not the ones who were having that big slumber party 6 feet underground. Now, the whole crowd was flabbergasted by this pronouncement, possibly because they knew the aforementioned trifecta of patriarchs had all been breathing dirt for a long time by this point, but they didn't elaborate. In fact, when the Pharisees heard the Sadducees couldn't think of a comeback for that, they decided to take another stab at it. They had one of their own, who happened to have gone to law school, step up to the plate. That guy introduced Jesus to this trick question. He said, "Hey, great one, which one is the most important rule you have to follow out of the whole Mosaic rule book?" So Jesus basically told him to ride the love train. It's about loving El Supremo with all faculties at your disposal, including your cardiovascular system, your undefinable wispy essence, and your brain. He said that's el numero uno. But he said the next important rule was similar. You had to think as highly of the guy next door as you did yourself. He said those two were the backbone of the playbook for both Moses and God's ancient fortune tellers. Since Jesus had them all there, he threw out his own bait to the Pharisees in the form of this question. Who do you think the dad of the Messiah is supposed to be? They knew the answer to that. It's going to be David. So Jesus busted them. He said, then why was David always calling the Messiah master? He quoted King Dave as saying that God said to Dave's master, the Messiah, to sit down and take a load off on God's right, while God made all the people who hated the Messiah into a piece of furniture the Messiah could rest his feet on. So if Dave called the Messiah master, how could the Messiah be Dave's offspring? That spiel just left them all standing there looking for something to say, but they never came up with anything. You could call it an awkward lull, at the very least, or maybe even a conversation killer. Next in this series, we'll move on to chapter 23. Spoiler alert, Jesus dedicates all 39 verses to ripping the Pharisees a new asshole. Though eventually killing him was a little harsh, you can see what started to push them over the edge. As always, I'm not a religious figure, but if you want me to save you or damn you to hell, I'll do my best.
You're not Bob Smeerfak and you're not growing a beard. Okay, next thing you'll tell me is you're not wiring me $200. That's okay by me. This is Ireland, not America. We don't spend books here and we don't shoot them. We just, read them.